Hi everyone, I've been working on the next group of major features in the game this week, crews and camps, getting ready for adding employee happiness over the coming videos. For those that don't know, Lumbermill is a management game and factory builder about constructing a lumber empire through efficient use of the forest. The first feature for this devlog is a vastly improved control panel system. These are a massively important part of the game's interface and allow you to see stats about buildings and employees at a glance. Up until now, they had to have been constructed by hand within Unity, which was starting to get a bit messy, as almost every building in the game has its own control panel. This causes quite a few problems. Firstly, it's hard to be consistent between control panels, and secondly, it means bugs in the control panels are much more likely. Based on the recent redesign of the heads-up display, I created the base layout for the new control panels. These will now be generated entirely by code from a set of components, which means things can be more consistent, less cluttered, and most importantly, less prone to bugs. I'd promised myself that as soon as I needed to implement any new control panels, I'd create this code-based system first, so here we are. I added the generator script to the control panel and set up the first component, a text field for the title. Once all the backend was set up, I got the first basic control panel generated, a replacement for the tree brush tool. Here's how building out a control panel works. You can call an add component method, select a component type, and it will then return that component to be configured. I got the new control panel working as it was before for the tree brush tool. You can adjust the size of the brush, set a budget for the tool, and everything will be limited correctly so you can't put in extreme values. Only difference is everything is now generated by code. Before getting too deep into the devlog, just a quick word about this video's sponsor, Core. Core is a free game development platform that supports the entire process of game creation, from designing and building to publishing and playing games. If you've never made a game before and are interested in getting into game development, Core is a great way to get started. There's no need to write any code, however if you do want to, Core supports scripting in Lua, which having tried myself, really makes this a very versatile platform. Thousands of art, music, and sound assets are provided completely free of charge, which you can combine to create anything you want. You can even edit and remix Core games directly within the platform, which is a great way to see how games are made. The Core community is really busy with loads of ways to get involved and inspired. Speaking of which, Core and Global Game Jam are currently hosting a game jam on itch.io, which is an excellent opportunity to try out Core. It's super easy to get started. If you follow the link in the description, you can download Core and get started developing games. As many of you have asked, I've been working on a game myself in Core, so keep an eye out for 2 special devlogs on that coming out next month. So with the control panel system ready, the first new feature for this devlog was inspired by cities' skylines, in which you're able to outline specialized districts and regions in your cities that carry out certain tasks. I've always found the brush system in that game really easy to use, particularly how you can either expand a district by clicking within it or create a new one by clicking in a blank space. This is how Lumberjack camps will be outlined in the game. I set up the necessary classes for the new brush tool and created a prefab which will allow camps to come up as an option in the build menu. As you can see here, you can select the camp option in the build menu, which then switches on the camp brush tool with just the title showing in the control panel for now. Based on the code for the tree brush, I soon got the tool painting onto the terrain, but encountered a few problems along the way. At first, the tool seemed to erase itself whenever mousing over a tile for the second time, and then it got confused about which tiles were being hovered over. I won't go into the details here, but I did eventually get that working. You can adjust the brush size and the tool will paint wherever you click. So the reason for having camps in the game is that typically Lumberjacks never worked alone, instead going out in crews to fell trees together. Camps are a convenient way to group employees where they'll have all the facilities they need to keep happy, and also to manage different crews for different tasks. You might have camps that focus on different areas of the forest, for example. I decided to draw some special tiles for the camp overlay rather than the default square indicators I use for things like building placement. These use the marching squares algorithm, the same as paving, allowing for the camp areas to be outlined. I got the sprite sheet for those sliced, and with them in the game, the camp brush tool worked like this. At that point, you couldn't create new camps by clicking outside of an existing camp though. So I got the tool to find the camp at the mouse position, and if there isn't one, it creates a new camp. That worked surprisingly well first time around, with the result at that point looking like this. So next you need to be able to erase camps as well as draw them. For that, I needed a new control panel component. The toggle component can have as many options as I want to add and allows for switching between the options. With the prefab created, I then created a script for the component and added the toggle component to the list of options in the control panel generator. Here's how you configure the toggle component in code form. The result was this, with draw and erase options both easily selectable and working correctly. The final touch for the camp brush was to add slight transparency to the tiles that make up the camp outlines. This just helps to highlight the areas that are and aren't camps a bit more clearly. Right, so with the first part of the crew system ready, it was time to create some new UI to actually display the different crews. I started by just bringing the Lumbermill interface up to date with the new UI color scheme and style. I do still like a lot of this interface, so it's really just a matter of adjusting each part to fit in with the new aesthetic, rather than a full redesign. Having said that, I do need to redesign the employee tab to show the new information about crews. I started with a paper mockup as always. Each crew contains a list of houses within the camp for that crew, and each house has a number of slots for employees to join that crew. A tent will have one slot, for example, whereas larger and more comfortable housing might have more slots. Each employee entry then displays information about the employee's job, pay, happiness, and training level. I tried to make the information as accessible and functional as possible without displaying too much on the screen at once. Once I'd finished creating the new layout though, I noticed there was some strange distortion in the UI where there normally wouldn't be. That's never a good sign. I noticed that the entire UI was actually scaled up to 1.35 times the normal size, meaning all the carefully selected sizes of every single object in the Lumbermill window was wrong. So at that point, I pretty much had to do all that work again, this time with the interface at the right scale so there wasn't any distortion. With that done, the scale finally looked right, and I added a mask system so that each row in the interface can be collapsed to hide any information the player doesn't want to look at. I then linked up the different parts of the interface to the code so that it can all generate correctly before creating the boxes that will display more detailed info about the employees. Once the mouse events had all been linked up, the final result of the new employee or crew interface looked like this. When you hover over info about a particular employee, more detailed data is displayed, which should hopefully help to make decisions such as whether to train an employee or to know exactly what is making an employee unhappy. The next devlog should hopefully be about the whole employee happiness system I've been preparing for, if all goes to plan. Alright, so taking a break from all the coding, I've been reading quite a few books about the early logging industries in North America, to try and make sure I don't miss any features that could make for interesting gameplay. Obviously, being a game, there are some adaptations I've made along the way, but I've definitely been keen to keep steering towards features and buildings that have existed in the industry. I've also been trying to make the most of the last few weeks of summer, getting out on my bike when I can before it gets too cold. Okay, so with the more code-heavy stuff out of the way, I decided to start creating some buildings that will play a role in the happiness of employees. If there are any happiness-related buildings you'd like to see in the game, let me know your thoughts and ideas in the comments. Of course, the first thing that came to mind was a toilet, so I got to work designing an outhouse-style wooden building which employees will be able to use on their breaks. I ended up rethinking how I draw planks, as I thought they could be improved and the machines that are made of planks need redesigning anyway. I set up the prefab, created an outhouse C# class, and added the new building to the options in the build menu. At first it was too tall, rivaling some of the taller trees, so I went back to shrink the sprite down to a more human size. I then drew the other 3 rotations for the outhouse before getting that back into the game, with the result looking like this. I'd like to eventually add a door opening animation to the building, but this works for now. So the final task for this week was to add a campfire. This will be useful as it boosts the comfort rating of all the housing within a 2-tile radius of the fire. It had to be animated, of course, so I spent quite a bit of time tweaking this to make sure it looked as fiery as possible. Being animated, I had to set up all the animations and transitions in Unity first, before adding some code to trigger the animation when the fire is placed. The final result was this. When a fire is placed, it catches a light and any housing in the surrounding area receives a comfort boost. I do think I need to find colours for the rocks that contrast a bit better with the grass, but this will do for now. If you're interested in getting the game when it comes out, you can add Lumbermill to your Steam wishlist at the link in the description. Each wishlist really does help me out, and it means you'll get notified when the game comes out or goes on sale. The game is gradually moving up the list of most wishlisted games on Steam, and would love to see it even higher by release. If you'd like to try out a new game engine, remember to check out Core. The link to that is in the description. Thanks for this video and supporting the channel. As always, go to my patrons. In particular, I'd like to thank Joshua, Warner M14, Ojo Marin, Nova, Gecko, Sheshpesh, Hayden, Kleb, Chris Naismith, Pepper Trollman, Mr. Smith, Mike James, BD Smith, and Logan. That's all for this video. Make sure to subscribe if you'd like to come along for the game's development, and I shall see you here next time. Thanks for watching.